while she's sitting in the dining area. Female Hawaiian or simple 140 to 5'5", medium build, wearing jeans.
Northern California in the late 1960s was a place of contradictions, peaceful hillsides, just minutes away from bustling, creative cities. Yet beneath the era of music festivals, anti-war protests, and cultural reinvention, an unease was growing. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly, with a pair of local tragedies that police couldn't explain. No witnesses, no motive, no clear suspect. But in time, these cases would form the dark opening chapter of the Zodiac Killer saga. A saga defined by coded messages, taunting letters, and a man who seemed to thrive on being uncatchable. By 1968, California was a cultural epicenter. Cities like San Francisco embodied new freedoms, but they also faced rising crime rates. Police departments across Vallejo, Napa County, and San Francisco ran independently, lacking modern digital coordination. This fragmentation would later play a critical role, slowing down connections between cases that today would be linked instantly by data. Car culture was thriving, and many young people spent evenings driving quiet county roads, picnicking at lakesides, or parking in secluded areas. These quiet spaces, intended for peaceful escapes, would tragically become the backdrop for the first attacks attributed to the Zodiac. On December 20, 1968, high school students Betty Lou J. and David F. drove out to Lake Herman Road for a quiet evening. The road, pitch black at night, stretched across rural land between Vallejo and Benicia. Sometime after 11 p.m., passing motorists found their cars stopped near a turnout. Police arriving on the scene were met with confusion. There were no witnesses and very few usable clues. This was the first recognized attack in what would later be attributed to the Zodiac. Investigators examined tire impressions, footprints, and shell casings. Local residents recalled hearing unusual popping sounds, but the timeline remained unclear. With so little evidence and no letter or claim of responsibility, the case felt like a tragic, isolated incident, not the beginning of a serial pattern. On July 4, 1969, Darlene F. and Michael M. visited Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. At around midnight, another vehicle approached them. It drove away, returned, and a man stepped out carrying a light-colored object. Moments later, the attacker fled, and Michael, severely injured but alive, managed to provide police with crucial details. His survival transformed the investigation. For the first time, authorities had a living witness who had seen the attacker up close. At 12:40 a.m., Vallejo PD received a call from a payphone. The caller calmly confessed to the Blue Rock Springs attack and to the previous Christmas attack on Lake Herman Road. His voice was steady, unemotional. This call marked the beginning of a chilling communication pattern. On July 31, 1969, 3 Northern California newspapers received nearly identical letters. Each letter claimed responsibility for the attacks and included details only investigators knew. Even more disturbing, each letter contained 1/3 of a cipher minus 408 symbols that the writer claimed would reveal his identity once solved. He demanded prominent front-page publication, threatening further violence if ignored. Authorities debated whether publishing the letters would create panic or lead to clues. Ultimately, the newspapers printed them. Days later, a school teacher and his wife cracked the cipher. It described the killer's alleged motives, written in chilling, emotionless language. But there was no name, no identity, just a promise of more crimes. On September 27, 1969, college students Brian H. and Cecilia spent the afternoon at the peaceful shores of Lake Berryessa. It was a warm Saturday, families picnicking, boats drifting across calm water, hikers passing by. But around 4 p.m., Brian and Cecilia noticed a man watching them from a distance. What began as a normal day was about to become one of the most iconic encounters in American criminal history. The man approached wearing an unusual outfit, a dark executioner-style hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes, and a symbol drawn on the chest, a circle intersected by a cross. This was the first time the Zodiac symbol, previously seen only on letters, appeared physically before witnesses. The attacker spoke calmly, claiming he had escaped from a prison in Montana and needed their car and money to flee to Mexico. His story was detailed, almost rehearsed. After the attack, a suspect walked toward Brian's car and used a marker to write the dates of his previous crimes on the passenger door, signing it with the same symbol. This chilling act, methodical and time-consuming, signaled a dramatic escalation of his desire for recognition and infamy. At 7:40 p.m., less than 2 hours after the attack, the Napa County Sheriff's Office received a call. The man on the line calmly confessed, providing precise details that had not yet been released to the public. The call was traced to a payphone located only blocks from the sheriff's office. Once again, he demonstrated boldness, committing crimes in rural isolation, then reporting them from populated areas as if daring police to catch him. Just 2 weeks later, on October 11, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, but this time in the heart of San Francisco. Paul Stein, a respected cab driver, picked up a fare in the theater district. The next confirmed stop was the intersection of Washington and Cherry Streets in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. At 9:55 p.m., a report came into SFPD. A cab driver had been attacked. 3 teenagers from a nearby house witnessed the suspect from across the street. They described a man wiping down the cab, appearing methodical and composed. The attacker then walked calmly north toward the Presidio, a behavior unusual for someone fleeing a crime scene. This composure became a hallmark of the Zodiac persona, bold, unhurried, and unafraid of being seen. For the first time, police had very recent eyewitnesses. The teens provided a description that led to the now famous composite sketch: short hair, round glasses, a heavy build, and a seemingly calm expression. This sketch would become the face of the Zodiac across decades, books, posters, and media coverage. During the initial police response, a critical error occurred. A dispatcher mistakenly broadcast that the suspect was black, based on a misunderstanding of the witness descriptions. As a result, 2 officers, responding quickly and on high alert, encountered a white male walking calmly away from the crime scene. Because of the incorrect broadcast description, they let him pass. In later letters to newspapers, the Zodiac claimed that he spoke briefly with officers who stopped him. This detail has never been confirmed, but it intensified frustration within SFPD. Whether or not the encounter actually occurred, Investigators believed the killer had walked straight through the active crime perimeter without being detained. The teenager's description of the suspect led to the creation of the iconic composite sketch. Released across newspapers and police bulletins, it became one of the most recognizable criminal sketches in American history. The sketch was revised a few days later, producing a slightly altered second version. The sketch played a crucial role in shaping public perception. For many, the image became synonymous with the Zodiac identity, a calm, slightly unassuming man blending into crowds. But like all composite sketches, it was an interpretation, filtered through lighting conditions, distance, stress, and memory. Decades of debate about accuracy followed. Some witnesses said the man they saw looked older than the drawing. Others believed it was nearly perfect. Yet despite the attention the sketch received, no arrest ever came directly from it. Throughout 1969 and 1970, police departments across Northern California attempted to collaborate, but technology was primitive by modern standards. There were no shared digital databases, no integrated communication systems, and limited interagency coordination. Information was exchanged by phone calls, paper submissions, and hand-delivered files. Despite public pressure, investigators faced a brutal reality. The Zodiac left very little forensic evidence that could definitively identify him. Many details came from letters which he controlled, from survivors who saw him only briefly, or from witnesses whose descriptions varied. He seemed to understand how to exploit the limitations of police work at the time. In late 1969 and throughout 1970, the Zodiac continued sending letters to newspapers, police, and occasionally private individuals. These messages alternated between taunting, threatening, and cryptic. The killer seemed as invested in the narrative surrounding his crimes as the crimes themselves. His words often fixated on the failure of the police to identify him, mocking officers, correcting newspaper reports, and framing himself as the mastermind in a deadly game he controlled. One recurring theme was his asserted body count. In multiple letters, he claimed far more victims than police were able to confirm. Each letter included his symbol and a new number beneath it, suggesting the total number of people he claimed to have killed. Whether these were factual or part of his psychological manipulation remains unresolved. But the tactic amplified public anxiety. Perhaps the most famous communication from the Zodiac came in November 1969. The 340 cipher, a block of 340 symbols arranged in a 17 by 20 grid. Unlike the earlier 408 cipher, which was cracked by a school teacher and his wife, the 340 remained unsolved for decades. For years, cryptographers, amateur codebreakers, and law enforcement teams pored over the mysterious grid. Patterns were tried, rearrangements tested, and thousands of computer simulations attempted. In December 2020, after 51 years, a team of private citizen codebreakers, David O. Yarlveith and Sam B., finally cracked the cipher using logical analysis and computer-assisted pattern recognition. The decrypted message did not reveal the killer's identity. Instead, it continued his tradition of taunting, dismissing police threats and referencing a 1969 television interview where he claimed he was not afraid of the gas chamber. The breakthrough was historic. Even half a century later, the Zodiac's communications continued shaping new chapters in the investigation. The cracking of the 340 cipher brought renewed attention to the case, proving that the killer's coded messages still held the power to captivate the public imagination. As the Zodiac letters and ciphers proliferated, newspapers experienced a surge in readership. Headlines ran nearly daily in the Bay Area. Residents bought papers not just for news, but to look for the latest coded message. The killer had achieved something rare. He had inserted himself into the daily rhythm of a major metropolitan area. People changed their habits. Couples avoided quiet roads. Taxi drivers refused certain neighborhoods after sunset. Schools discussed safety measures. Some citizens carried weapons, while others volunteered in patrol groups. In this environment, rumors multiplied, and police struggled to balance transparency with preventing public panic. The media, aiming to inform but also compete for readership, amplified every development. Reporters followed detectives, speculated on leads, and published letters almost immediately. The killer appeared to thrive on this attention. His letters often referenced newspapers directly, critiquing articles, and even providing instructions for how editors should publish his messages. Among the many suspects investigated over the years, one name stands out more than any other: Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen was a former schoolteacher whose life contained a series of troubling incidents unrelated to the Zodiac case. Two close acquaintances independently reported him to police, citing strange comments he had made and his alleged interest in violence-themed writings. Allen lived in Vallejo, not far from where the Zodiac's early crimes occurred. He owned a watch featuring the same crosshair symbol used by the killer, a detail that investigators found intriguing but not conclusive. His personality, according to some who knew him, was sometimes abrasive and unsettling. Yet none of these elements qualified as evidence of involvement. In 1972, Vallejo detectives interviewed Allen, who denied any connection to the crimes. His alibis were inconsistent, though not definitively disproven. Over the years, police searched his home, seized weapons, and collected handwriting and DNA samples. Despite public perception, Allen was never formally charged or even officially named as the Zodiac in any conclusive report. In 1991, after Allen's death, DNA testing on one of the Zodiac envelopes did not match him. While this result is significant, experts cautioned that the DNA may not have belonged to the killer. Letters were handled by multiple people over decades. Still, the mismatch weakened the theory. To this day, Allen remains a polarizing figure. To some, he is the most likely suspect. To others, he was an eccentric man unjustly linked to a famous case. Beyond Allen, investigators examined dozens of other individuals over the years. Some had strong circumstantial ties. Others were the focus of public speculation. One notable name often debated in documentaries and books is Richard Gaikowski, a journalist whose appearance resembled the composite sketch. His work hours matched certain crime timelines, and he lived near early crime locations. However, police found no conclusive evidence linking him to the attacks. Another debated figure is Lawrence Kane, known for memory issues following a head injury. Kane lived in areas connected to several victims and had a history that raised questions. Still, once again, evidence was mainly circumstantial. A number of private individuals, referred to here as MHRG, and TP, were also examined and cleared or left in ambiguity. In the last 2 decades, forensic science has transformed. DNA analysis, once limited, can now detect microscopic traces. Companies specializing in genealogical DNA have helped solve cold cases once thought impossible. Naturally, the Zodiac case drew interest from these technological advances. Some letters contain partial DNA profiles, though it remains unclear whether the DNA belonged to the Zodiac, a postal worker, or newspaper staff. Investigators have publicly stated that no complete, uncontaminated sample exists. Despite this, modern labs continue to explore new testing methods, hoping to extract usable genetic material from preserved envelopes or stamps. Thanks for watching! If you'd like more long-form investigations like this, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps these stories alive.